Hey everyone, welcome back to another explosive installment of Homeowner Association Stories. Today's saga is about how an entitled HOA tried to take advantage of my private property, specifically my warehouse parking, and how I made sure they paid for every bit of it. Let's jump into the video. I've owned and operated my shipping business for over 10 years. Throughout that time, I never had any issues with my neighbors, at least not until the community next door turned into a homeowners association. That's when everything started to unravel. You see, the HOA assumed that just because their new community center stood next to my warehouse, they somehow had a right to my parking lot. Let me paint the layout for you. From left to right, a small office sits beside a large warehouse where we prep, package, and dispatch shipments. Behind that warehouse is the designated parking area for my trucks and vans. The open lot stretches roughly 100 feet from the office, wrapping around the back where access is restricted by a secure, badge-only gate. Everything ran like clockwork until that HOA constructed a new meeting hall adjacent to my lot. I had no objections to the building itself. After all, it wasn't encroaching on my land. But things took a sharp turn when they began hosting regular meetings. That's when I started noticing unfamiliar cars congesting my lot. On multiple occasions, my team was ready to send out a shipment only to find vehicles blocking the warehouse entrance. What stung the most wasn't just the congestion, it was the blatant disrespect. They didn't even use the parking spots closest to their building. No, they fanned out across my lot like it belonged to them. With 2 large trucks and 5 vans, our operations depend on fluid movement. Their cars made it borderline impossible for my drivers to navigate without risking accidents. Despite the blatant overstep, I tried to be patient. Signs clearly stated the lot was private and warned against unauthorized parking. I let it slide twice, thinking maybe they'd eventually catch on. But the third time, I walked into their meeting and addressed them directly, politely explaining that the parking lot was for my business, not their events. And just to be clear, the HOA's building did have a parking area in front, just not as big or convenient as mine. I hated being the bad guy, but I couldn't allow their negligence to keep compromising my business. They barely reacted when I spoke. I left, hoping that was the end of it. Spoiler, it wasn't. A major storm system was approaching, threatening shipments and flooding schedules. So my crew and I went to the warehouse to get ahead of the chaos. But when we arrived, the lot was once again littered with HOA vehicles. Worse, my warehouse door, which functions like a giant garage shutter, was cracked open halfway. Inside? Half a dozen cars parked under my roof. That's right. Someone from the HOA had broken into my warehouse and parked their vehicles inside to keep them out of the rain. My blood boiled. Not only were they still ignoring my warnings, they were now trespassing inside my actual building. I didn't bother knocking on doors or playing nice anymore. I immediately called the nearest towing service and requested a mass tow for about 20 unauthorized vehicles. The trucks showed up fast and handled the job efficiently. By the time they cleared the last car, another storm front was brewing, and I made the call to shut things down for the night, but not before triple-locking every access point to the warehouse. The next morning, I got a call from local police. Someone had reported multiple stolen vehicles near my property. When the officer listed the vehicles in question, I calmly informed him those were the very cars I had towed, vehicles that were trespassing on private property. I explained everything, from the posted warnings to my past interactions with the owners. I even shared the towing company's info so they could pass it on to the rightful car owners. For a while, things went quiet. I assumed the HOA members had retrieved their vehicles and maybe finally learned their lesson. Nope. Instead, I got a call from the HOA president, furious and threatening legal action. She claimed I'd pay for the cost of retrieving all 20 cars. I reminded her that her members parked on my property, not theirs. She countered by insisting the HOA's land technically extended into my parking area. That's when I cut her off and told her flat out if she wanted to go to court, I'd be ready with a countersuit. I rang up my lawyer and began prepping. I wasn't just going after them for the towing fees, I was demanding compensation for lost business due to their obstruction. My lawyer instructed me to gather everything: old photos, signed receipts, warehouse blueprints, whatever proved my claims. While I hadn't snapped many photos before, I did have pictures from the day of the towing, shots of cars parked inside my warehouse. That alone made their trespassing undeniable. I dug up the construction plans, which clearly showed my property boundaries. The HOA's claim that they had any ownership of my lot crumbled on the spot. Eventually, court day arrived. The HOA actually had the audacity to file a countersuit accusing me of trespassing, saying that my brief appearance at one of their meetings to address the parking issue was illegal since I wasn't part of their association. Absurd. My lawyer pointed out that I had entered not to disrupt, but to inform, a distinction the judge recognized. That charge was dismissed instantly. But they kept going, questioning the legitimacy of my property lines. My lawyer swiftly countered with documented proof that my warehouse and lot had existed for years before the HOA was even formed. We even pulled property filings from the county office to shut them down. The HOA's final argument was that I had no right to tow their cars without notifying them. Again, false. I showed the judge the long-standing signage, my verbal warning at their meeting, and the fact that their cars weren't just on my lot, they were inside my warehouse. The judge agreed that I had taken the proper steps and ruled in my favor. I won. I was compensated for the towing fees and the revenue I lost during that day's shipping disruption. But that's not all. The ruling caused such backlash within the HOA that the entire board collapsed soon after. That had never been my goal, but it sure ended the nightmare. Ever since that showdown, no one has dared misuse my lot. As I expand my business into new locations, I've made one thing crystal clear: no more neighbors with HOA ties. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice? Not going to happen. Lesson learned for them.